See, I am the real thing.
Hi everybody, welcome to the first episode of the History of the Hordern series. In this series we'll be discussing the Hordern Pavilion, where it came from, what's happening now, and the exciting future of what is to come. It's exciting. This is the first full episode, numero uno. It's also exciting as today marks the birthday and the 101st anniversary of the official opening of the Hordern Pavilion on the 2nd of April 1924. It celebrated its 100th year anniversary or centenary celebration last year in 2024. And we are a year on from that, of course. And I, for one, am still excited about the future of the Hordern Pavilion. So it is a day of celebration, it is a day of fun, it is a day of reflection, and hopefully we'll do all of that in the time I have with you today. I have a few cool pictures to show you and a few surprises along the way that I hope you'll enjoy. Before I start, this YouTube channel and myself acknowledges traditional owners of country of the lands of where the Hordern Pavilion is situated, as well as where this podcast is being made. We acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters and community, and we pay our respects to the people, the cultures and the elders past and present. Also, as an introduction, I'd like to express that this is the unauthorized podcast of the history of the Hordern. The views in this video are my own and my own research unless stated. And they do not reflect the views or opinions of the Hordern Pavilion itself, or Playbill venue staff or others associated with the management and running of the Hordern. I feel that it is my duty to provide the history in a format like this, so that in the future, if anybody is doing any research on the Hordern Pavilion, this could be possibly a handy resource. As well as, of course, the main objective, celebrating a part of the music-rich history that Australia has to offer. I hope you enjoyed our main intro and a few things I'd like to mention in that opening clip. You will have seen the 1 to 4 counts with the chipmunk voice. That was a band called the Flying Circus, and it was them performing the hit single La La on the ABC TV program Hit Scene, which was broadcasted in December of 1969. The second one was Get Together from the Dave Miller Set, recorded back in 1968. They were one of the most popular and hard-working live bands on the East Coast in the late 60s. The third one was The Real Thing by Russell Morris. And a little-known fact was that Molly Meldrum was his manager in those early days. In fact, this photo was taken back at that first concert, and you're just able to see Molly on stage with the band and the iconic windows on the background of the Hordern Pavilion. The last one was a small clip of Turn Up Your Radio by the Masters Apprentices. And if you had noticed, had a notable character on guitar. Yes, it's Glenn Wheatley, who was the manager of John Farnham before his untimely passing a few years back. These were just 4 of the 8 music acts that played at the known earliest show of the Hordern way back in 1969 that I could find. We will cover more of that iconic show in a later episode in this series, so you'll have to stay tuned for that one. So today we celebrate the opening of the Hordern Pavilion. So it's only fair that we play this song. Now, if you haven't seen our prequel, I'm calling it a prequel because this is the first main episode that we shot back in January of this year. Please go back and watch it. Basic as it is, I didn't have any posters around me. It was just me, hair slicked back. So go back and check it out. But if you have very little time like me, then I'll explain something for those who were born after the year, let's say the year 2000. Back in the day, we didn't have social media. and ongoing scrolling of YouTube videos, things like that to keep us updated with the latest trends or news. We had newspapers. These were usually large and bulky, and I'll put some pictures up for those that aren't aware what newspapers are. They were black ink on white or grey paper, and they'll be printed up with today's news that you would be received the next day. There would be vendors screaming, "Extra, extra! Read all about it!" Just like that. And you would read about what happened yesterday. Sometimes you wouldn't find out about it until days later. And then today, the process would continue all over again. So we'll be looking at newspaper articles a little bit, so I need you to keep that in mind. Now, to remind you of this amazing day, the Hordern Pavilion was officially opened on the 2nd of April, 1924. As reported in the Sydney Morning Herald, dated Thursday, the 3rd of April 1924, the day after, of course, it states, "In the presence of the representative gathering, the new pavilion which has been erected by Messrs. Anthony Hordern Sons Limited." Now, Messrs. is the plural form of Mr. You don't see it much these days, but it basically means that it was used before the names of two or more men, often in the title of a company. It goes on to say, "At the Royal Agricultural Ground was officially opened by Sir George Fuller yesterday." Now, the Royal Agricultural Ground was the site of the Royal Easter Show from 1882 till 1997. We'll look at this amazing history in more detail again in a later episode. Now, as a background, Sir George Fuller was the New South Wales Premier from 1922 to 1925. And I'll put a picture of this fine-looking gentleman. Now, it does go on to say that there's a number of dignitaries that were there, and here they are in splendid glory. Seeing them all smartly dressed and comparing to today's fashion. This picture was published in the Daily Telegraph on the 4th of April 1924, a couple of days later. We won't go through every single one today, but I'll leave a link in the description about where you can find this particular article, and you can look further into the individuals who were there if it interests you. Also, as a reminder, all of the articles that listed here today will be in a link in the description down below, so that you can view them at a later time at your leisure. Now, back to the Sydney Morning Herald article on the 3rd of April. It does state, and bear with me, as this is one thing that did concern me just a little while doing this Hordern research, is that the description of a new pavilion that is 2.5 times the site of the old pavilion on the site of which the new structure has been erected. That's okay, so far so good. So in another episode, we'll go into those buildings and so forth. Believe it or not, it started as a tent, but I'm not going to show you that now. That's later. The frontage is 180 feet and the depth is a few feet less. So just remember that, 180 feet. It continues with the central dome of the pavilion is carried on 12 Corinthian columns, which harmonize with the general finish of the building. I'll show you the picture that accompanies this article. It's a little hazy and I apologize for that, but you'll have to do some imagining with me. Now, there's a building called the Byron Kennedy Hall to this day, adjacent to the Hordern Pavilion. It was renamed this in 1998 in honor of the late film producer, best known for co-directing Mad Max. How many Mad Max fans are out there? Leave a comment in the description if you like. This is what the Byron Kennedy Hall looks like now. This hall is located adjacent to the Hordern Pavilion, but wait, didn't I say this was the opening day of the Hordern Pavilion, not the Byron Kennedy Hall? I promise we'll get there and we'll sort it all out soon. While doing this particular research, I thought I may have changed the course of history and find out that the Hordern may be younger or older than what it is. However, I can confirm that through many sources, that the Hordern Pavilion, as we know it today, opened on the 2nd of April, 1924. Another article published by the Daily Telegraph back on the 19th of December, 1923. So this is a couple of months before. Will clear all of this up for us, and history stands true to this day. I'll zoom in a little closer for you, and you can see both the pictures of the outside of the Byron Kennedy Hall and the picture of the Hordern Pavilion. We'll show some comparisons. And it's being discussed in this article called Building and Construction, How Sydney is Extending. It is quite an interesting article to read. So if you've got the time later on, please feel free to look at what developments were being made and what buildings were being propped up all around the place. However, we're focusing on the Hordern Pavilion, so we won't get sidetracked. Firstly, the Byron Kennedy Hall, which was originally used as a meet hall, banquet hall, and exhibition space. And in fact, there are 2 plaques to this day mounted on the entry of that building. So you have the frontage of what is now called the Byron Kennedy Hall, and this is what the front looks like now. And we have the Hordern Pavilion back then, labelled as an industrial hall. And of course, what it looks like now. It looks amazing and impressive in every sense of the word. And we'll be discussing this building and its architecture in another episode. And I do hope that you'll look out for that one. So we'll go back to the article. Even the year of 1924 and the Royal Easter Show would be redefined forever due to the construction of these new buildings and the grandstand as well. That'll be covered later in another episode. The article goes on to say, the remarkable advance in building operations over the past year in the city and suburbs of Sydney have exemplified at the showgrounds of the Royal Agricultural Society at Moore Park, the appearance of which next Easter will be altered almost out of recognition. So this article being published in 1923 is talking about the 1924 show, by when the buildings would be completed ready for the show, which must go on as always. As we look further down the article, we finally clear up that confusion, that I had at least. And some important facts also included. While the new industrial hall, which named after Sir Samuel Hordern, the Society's president, is to be known as the Hordern Pavilion, will cost about £40,000. This building, which is shown in the accompanying photograph, is approaching the roofing stage, occupies a space of 220 feet square, and about half of it will, at next Easter show, be occupied by motorcar exhibits. Another thing that I quite liked, being a car fanatic myself. Almost at the end of this article, it refers to one of the new private buildings, that of Messrs. Anthony Hordern & Sons. Remember back in the article, the 3rd of April? Same building, okay? So this is now talking about the Messrs. Anthony Hordern & Sons building, renamed the Byron Kennedy Hall in 1998, and is well in the course of construction as the photograph shows. The building occupies a frontage of 150 feet. We have a little confusion again about the size, as with the Sydney Morning Herald stating 180 feet. And here is the Daily Telegraph stating 150 feet. This I'll have to put down to editorial differences in writing at the day. I think even to this day, 4 different articles will be written and they'll have a slight interpretation of what happens. But what you'll find is the truth right in the middle of it. But the main point is, after all of this, is that on the day of the 2nd of April, 1924, the Hordern Pavilion was officially opened, along with the Anthony Hordern & Sons Pavilion and the grandstand. Let's go back to the article from the Sydney Morning Herald on the 3rd of April, 1924. Sir George Fuller went on to say that Sir Samuel Hordern, and also that of the primary producers, which had enabled the Sydney show to become the largest show as regards to a variety of exhibits in the world. He went on to say that he was glad to read a statement by Sir Samuel Hordern, as president of the RAS, the Royal Agricultural Society, that the forthcoming show would be a record one. It would be held at a time when a number of distinguished visitors would be in Sydney, and thus would afford a splendid opportunity of demonstrating the resources of Australia. We were primary producers back then: agriculture, breeding, cattle, etc. So the Royal Agricultural Society, with the Royal Easter Show, showed off that. And even to this day, they still show off the cattle, the horses, the livestock. All that is still a prime fixture of the Royal Easter Show. Further on, Sir George Fuller would wish bon voyage to Sir Samuel Hordern, who was leaving shortly for the British Empire exhibition. As part of his duties as president of the Royal Agricultural Society, and also being part of the Anthony Hordern & Sons Empire, which owned one of the largest department stores in the world at the time, which is something to say at least, again, for Australia. So this is one of the reasons I enjoyed this particular research, and where further episodes will actually talk about Sir Samuel Hordern himself, his family, and his contribution not only to New South Wales economy and success, but also the success of Australia as a whole on the world stage, even right back from the 1920s. So there you have it, folks. the first episode of the history of the Hordern, and on the official birth of the Hordern, 2nd of April 1924. Now, there are many years before 1924 that we can cover, and we'll do that in further episodes. And there are many years from 1924 up to now that we'll also cover in future episodes. So I do hope that you'll stick around for those. There are more memories being created at the Hordern Pavilion with every show and event that continues to be held there. And every time you yourself even attend the events or shows that occur at the Hordern Pavilion, you're becoming part of that history every day, every week, month and year. I hope you enjoyed this little trip back in time. And if you enjoyed this episode, please do share and like it. It'll help us grow this channel. And until next time, I miss you already. Thanks for watching.
A new day has begun, touching every love.